The second thing I want to talk about briefly is Netflix. Netflix and lawfare. Permit me to explain. I love Netflix. I don't get to watch a lot of television, but sometimes when I come in the evening and I want to relax, I'll watch one of the shows on Netflix. And, you know, they have shows, like I wrote a few down, Godless, Adolescence, Ripley, The Queen's Gambit, just wonderful, wonderful acting. I really admire Netflix. It's a great American company. The ingenuity, the creativity that its founders had to have to come up with this concept. You know, video demand through streaming. Netflix is so successful today. They have 325 million subscribers. Their movies go out, and their limited series go out all across the world, 56 languages, I think. Netflix has 16,000 employees. They generate about $45 billion a year in cash flow. It's just a great American company, and I'm proud of it. That's why I was so surprised to hear recently some of the things said by one of the Netflix board of directors. I don't know how many directors Netflix has. I think it's anywhere from 10, 11, 12, 13. Really bright people. You go through and read their resumes, you can't help but be impressed. They're well compensated. Now, just to be a board member, they pay you $300,000 a year. But I was shocked to hear what one of their board members said. And I don't know if this board member was speaking for Netflix because she's so prominent. She's well known, and it's well known that she is on the board of Netflix. I think she was on the board of Netflix and then went into government. I'm talking, of course, about Miss Susan Rice, who worked for President Obama and President Biden. Stanford graduate, Rhodes Scholar, as a D.Phil from Oxford. Ms. Rice is just, I guess I should say Dr. Rice is absolutely brilliant. But anyway, one of her paying gigs right now, I suspect she'll go back into government. One of her paying gigs right now is she's a very prominent independent director for Netflix. And it's very hard to I mean, when she's so prominent, you have this extraordinary American company, they're kind of joined at the hip. That's why I was so surprised. I want to read you what Ms. Rice said. I'm going to quote. These are her words, not mine. This is what Ms. Rice said. When it comes to the elites, you know, the corporate interests, the law firms, the universities, the media, it's not going to end well for them. For those that decided that they would act in their perceived, very narrow self-interest, which I would underscore is very short-term self-interest, and take a knee to Trump, not President Trump, not Mr. Trump, take a knee to Trump. As on the side, that'll surprise me because when I talk about President Obama or President Biden or President Trump, I'm always very careful to call them president. Democrat or Republican. It's a matter of respect. But she said, I'm going to repeat this sentence, for those that decided they would act in their perceived very narrow self-interest, Ms. Rice said, which I would underscore as very short-term self-interest, and take a knee to Trump. They are going to be caught with more than their pants down. They're going to be held accountable by those who come in opposition to Trump and win at the ballot box. If these corporations, I don't know if she's talking about Netflix or not. I know she's on the board of Netflix. If these corporations think that the Democrats, Ms. Rice, as you probably know, is a prominent Democrat. If these corporations think that the Democrats, when they come back in power, are going to play by the old rules and say, never mind, we'll forgive you for all the people you fired, all the policies and principles you violated, all the laws you've skirted, I think they've got another think coming. Because just like when Trump thought, once again, Trump, not President Trump, because just like when Trump thought, okay, I'll redistrict, and the Democrats won't have the guts to play hardball, they're going to be surprised. Democrats have had a bellyful. And we're not going to play by the old set of rules when these guys are playing by a different set of rules. End quote. Ms. Rice talked about being surprised. I'm surprised. I'm shocked. What came to mind initially when I read these words is you can only be young once, but you can always be immature. You can only be young once, but you can always be mature. What Ms. Rice is talking about is payback. What Ms. Rice seems to be saying is two wrongs don't make it right, but they do make it even. What Ms. Rice seems to be saying, and I don't know whether she's speaking on behalf of Netflix or not, but what Ms. Rice seems to be saying is that it's okay in America today to use the law to prosecute and harass your political enemies. I find that astounding, coming from a person of her stature. That's the sort of thing that doesn't happen in America. That's the sort of thing that's only supposed to happen in countries whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. Not America. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in equal protection. We believe nobody is above the law, but nobody's beneath it. I can't think of a more irresponsible statement for somebody to make. You know, I remember when former President Biden started this lawfare business. Former President Biden, directly and indirectly, instructed Judge Merrick Garland, who was then Attorney General, to prosecute a former President of the United States, a former President of the United States who had run against President Biden, Attorney General Garland's boss, and a former President of the United States who at the time he was prosecuted by the Justice Department was a current opponent against President Biden. And I remember thinking at the time, they have unleashed spirits they cannot control. That is not what America is all about. And I know some are going to say, well, President Trump is doing the same thing. If that's true, I don't like that either. In fact, when many of President Trump's nominees for the Justice Department came and appeared before us for confirmation in judiciary, which I said, I talked to them about this. I said, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even is wrong. It was wrong then when President Biden did it. It's wrong now if people are doing it, and it's going to be wrong if Ms. Rice gets back in government. And it is wrong for her to advocate this, especially if she's doing it on behalf of Netflix, a great American company. Guys, you can only be young once, but man, oh man, you can always be immature. I suggest the absence of a quorum